Hi, everyone. I'm Megan, and this is Beguiled by Books, where I share short summaries and reviews for books across a variety of genres. Today, I've got my August 2024 reading wrap up. Let's get started. In August, I ended up reading 14 books, and part of that was because I wanted to prepare for some upcoming travel and really make sure that I had a lot of content ready to go for my website. So wanted to go ahead and take care of as much prep work as I could. So I put the nose to the grindstone and I really read a lot of books, and I ended up wrapping up the month with 14 books completed. I started August with a book called Gods of Jade and Shadow, and this book is by the same author who did Silver Nitrate, which I also read this month, we'll talk about later, and also did Mexican Gothic along with several others. And I found this at my local bookstore, picked it up, it looked interesting, Mayan mythology, kind of magical realism come to life, and it was a fun little read. It was a good way to ease into the month with a nice light book. Wasn't too much in any one genre, just very casual, very light and enjoyable. I read Green Witchcraft, which I found at my local bookstore, and picked this up because it just looked interesting. I'm always curious about different ways we can use the plants and nature around us to enhance our lives and not take advantage of those natural resources. And I took a look at Green Witchcraft, and it's a really good just overview of connecting with the earth and the elements around, and then also the different types of plants and their meanings. Really cool book for reference. I read a lot in this genre because I really like knowing what people are thinking and how they're interacting with the earth. So this was a fun read and would highly recommend it if you're interested in witchcraft, if you're interested in being more natural and herbalism. And I would also recommend this if you are interested in researching more, because you might be writing a novel or doing something in that vein. This one is a good one. Having recently read Entangled Life, I went on a bit of a nature kick for the books that I was reading. So I started August with Finding the Mother Tree, and I really enjoyed the author's deep dive into the science of the fungal networks that connect trees. Very similar to Entangled Life, but very different in the sense that the author is a forestry service member in the Pacific Northwest. So different tone, different take on the way we interact with trees and how humans and nature get along. It was a really good book. It was also part memoir, so the author wove in a lot of her personal experiences, but I found this really informative and also very touching in a lot of ways. So I would definitely recommend Finding the Mother Tree. I read the book Rooted following Finding the Mother Tree and really found myself enjoying Rooted. This book beautifully blends spirituality, nature, and science all together for the reader to understand how interconnected everything is, and also to help illustrate how disconnected we have become from nature as we live in cities and suburbs and have cars take us everywhere, and we're constantly comfortable and we don't have to face a lot of discomfort. On the one hand, that's really great, and those are huge advancements for society. We can live longer, be happier, prosper more. But on the other hand, we are so far removed from our natural world. What toll has that taken on us as humans when we spent so much of our evolution living amongst nature and living in harmony with nature? Rooted was a really great book exploring that concept and those questions, and I would absolutely recommend it if you're in the mood for a nature book. I read Birding to Change the World. I absolutely loved this book. I enjoy watching birds from the porch and seeing them around my neighborhood. That's lovely and it's really fun. But I never thought about birding as any type of activism. And the author of Birding to Change the World uses birding as an illustration for environmental activism. It was a really cool take on nature and birding and also that activism element. It reminded me so much of the show Parks and Recreation and Leslie Knope, and just her spirit and enthusiasm for parks and for making sure people have access to these things. I thought Birding to Change the World was a delightful book, and everyone should read it. It's a fun book and also full of learning that you don't realize you're learning. In August, I also read Meditations for Mortals by Oliver Burkeman, and I read 4,000 Weeks by him previously when that came out. Really enjoyed it as someone who loves efficiency and learning different ways of being more productive. I was very keen to read 4,000 Weeks. I enjoyed it so much, I immediately tried to get a copy of Meditations for Mortals. So thank you to the publisher for that book. This was a great book. Again, Oliver Burkeman's premise is you don't have enough time to do everything that you want to do. So what can you edit to better enjoy your life? I love that premise. I love the thought of instead of adding and piling on more, you edit and take more things out. What can you reasonably expect to do? Focus on the things that do matter. Easier said than done. But of course, the point of the book is to go into those things more with the author and learn how to make those decisions for yourself. In August, I also had an advanced reader copy of the book, A Song to Drown Rivers. And I was excited to read this. It looked fantasy, Asian mythology, and I loved this book until the very end. I don't want to give away spoilers, but if you know my feelings on the book Song of Achilles, yeah, I didn't like Song of Achilles. I hated the way that book ended, and this book embodied the ending of Song of Achilles, and I did not love that. It did not feel good. It did not give the reader closure. I was a 5-star up until that point, and then that book really kind of just, I had to knock it down to 3 stars. Unfortunately, it just wasn't, the ending really just took me out of it and made me want to throw the Kindle across the room, unfortunately. Really great concept, really great execution until maybe the last 2 chapters, and then it lost me. About halfway through August, I decided it was time to get ready for spooky season. I first started with Frankenstein. I had read the original Frankenstein back in high school and didn't like it, probably because of Victorian language used, but I had previously read Pride and Prejudice this year, so I thought, let's give Frankenstein another go and see how I feel. I loved it. It really holds up even after all this time. I was genuinely surprised and impressed how well the story holds up after all these decades. So I think everyone should absolutely read Frankenstein and then think about how Frankenstein and Frankenstein's monster have been depicted in movies and TV over the years, and think about how different those two things really are. Truly a great thought exercise that I really enjoyed discussing after I read Frankenstein. In August, I read Never Whistle at Night, which is an anthology of dark fiction horror stories from Indigenous authors. Indigenous mythologies and beliefs are always really interesting, and I love seeing how they have similarities as well as major differences across different geographies, across different backgrounds, and then how different colonizing countries have altered those stories for their own benefit, and seeing those overlaps and similarities. Never Whistle at Night was a great anthology of short stories. Some were mildly weird and others were deeply unsettling. So it had a really good range, and I love short story anthologies because it's easy to just read a short story and then put the book down, go do something else, and then come back to it. And Never Whistle at Night did a great job of having a bunch of different types of short stories for the reader. I read The Berry Pickers, and I was quite interested to see what this book would be. I knew it had an Indigenous author and an Indigenous background to the characters, but the story is about a young girl who is in a very strict and conservative household, and then the story of a young girl who was taken from her family and how those worlds intersect. It was a very slow, quiet novel, very much a snapshot of this 1 or 2 individuals' lives over time, over like 50 years. So big time jumps, big things happen, but in very small and quiet ways. It was very interestingly done. I'm glad I read it. It was a really important tale to be told, but ultimately quiet and gentle. Continuing my preparation for spooky season, I read Out There Screaming, which is an anthology of Black authors' short stories, which was edited by Jordan Peele, again, in the horror genre. Very similar to Never Whistle at Night in terms of the short story anthology, but these stories I found to be much creepier, more unsettling, because they were so intertwined with our day-to-day world and pop culture. It was like each short story was its mini episode of Black Mirror. It was creepy and unsettling, some more so than others, and just left you feeling kind of prickly and weird in a good way if you like horror, but definitely unsettling. So really great book to get you in the mood for Halloween and spooky season. I ended August with Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia. And Silver Nitrate was very fun. There was a lot of witchcraft, there was a lot of occultism in there, a lot of throwbacks to Victorian time occultism, and it takes place in Mexico City in the early 90s. I enjoy the time period. I really enjoy the characters. It was not as creepy and unsettling as I was looking for, but that's because I read a lot of witchcraft already. So I really love magic books. I really love occultism. I've read a lot in that genre and in that vein. So it was less like, ooh, that's weird and creepy, because a lot of things were weirder and creepier that I've read. But Silver Nitrate was a super fun story that I loved how it ended. I loved how the witchcraft and the occultism was represented throughout the book. And I thought the magic system was done really, really well. So Silver Nitrate definitely holds up to the hype. Throughout August, I slowly plodded my way through a book called How Not to Be Wrong. And this book was recommended to me by a friend who's very much a math nerd and loved this book. And I am not a math nerd. I'm a word nerd. That's why I'm here. But this book was great because it really helped you take a good look at statistics and mathematical concepts to apply them to the real world, and not in that word problem way that so many people are taught in school with, one person having 55 watermelons or something crazy. This was all about statistics and how statistics can be misrepresented or not misrepresented to tell a story, taking that adage, statistics don't lie, statisticians do, and really breaking it down and understanding why, to help the reader know when things are being spun and for whose favor. Very good book if you're looking for a detailed look at mathematical concepts as well as the statistical concepts that are used so often in the news and media. Very helpful book, but it was a slow book to read. There are proofs, there are algebraic problems in there that you look at, there are graphs, there are charts. It was detailed, but it was very, very good. The last book I snuck in right at the end of August is called Diary of a Void. And this was recommended by the owner of my local bookstore. And again, a very short book, right around 200 pages. And it chronicles the months of a pregnancy when our main character announces that she's pregnant at work, but in fact, she's not. And then what happens thereafter. Originally written in Japanese, it was translated into English. It's a really compelling story. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it for how short the novel is. It's a cool look at gender roles, gender dynamic, expectations on women, and how all of that plays a part into this one character's life and what that means. If you're interested in something short and easy to read, but also kind of weird and unsettling, I would recommend Diary of a Void. What books did you read in August, and what books do you think I should read in the coming months? Please let me know. Drop a comment and let me know what I should read, and I look forward to hearing from it. As always, if you like this video, please don't forget to give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great day.